Sure. Yeah, thank you. So again, today we have our durable event as the end of our track of algorithm and data structure on basic themes. If you missed any video, you can go to our YouTube channel of Women Who Code, and you can see terms that you missed. As a reminder, we have this track that started in spring, and we had sessions where we also practiced some code with LeetCode. And I hope we covered all basics on our algorithms and data structure. If we will have time, we will be glad to continue this track with some advanced topics. So please follow us, follow our news. And today we want to do this discussion on how to pass interview with algorithm and data structure, and even any interview on software engineer. Today we have a panel discussion with three adorable speakers, Jamica, Abibshe, and Arai. And I want to give you microphone to introduce yourself. Let's start with Jamica.
Hey everyone, my name is Jamica. So I've been volunteering with Women Who Code since the beginning of this year, and it's been a blast. It's always been a good experience to volunteer, and as Helen said, it's a great community. Absolutely love working with Helen and Irina in organizing the events here. So I'm an engineering manager for a fintech based here in London called Thought Machine. I've been there for a few years now, and on a regular basis, I do interview candidates there applying for backend engineers. So hopefully, I've got some useful tips to offer in the panel discussion. That's me.
Jamica, thank you so much. So, Aviksha, what about you?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Abibsha. I have been volunteering with Women Who Code actively since the beginning of this year. Earlier, I used to be a member, but I used to take part like in these sessions as a participant. Majorly, I have attended quite a few sessions in London in person, and I absolutely loved them. And since the beginning of this year, I thought of actually volunteering and taking part in as a speaker and presenting as well. I am a software engineer. I currently work as a senior engineer with an entertainment startup in London. I have about close to 11 years of experience in software engineering now, have done a variety of roles across the industry. I have been on either sides of the interview. I do interview people. I have switched quite a few jobs, so have been through the interview stages of a software engineer as well. So I think I can bring that experience and expertise to answer any questions or to help you guys progress through your interviews or prepare for them. Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope we would return to offline events in 2022, probably.
Yes, I sincerely so.
As we have these events remotely, we are allowed also to ask people from all over the world to join and be in as volunteers as well. And this is the story that happened with Arai. Arai, are you ready?
Hi, everyone. My name is Arai. I joined the Women Who Code right after having a mock interview with Irina, and she, after our successful interview, which was for me so helpful, he mentioned about the Women Who Code, where I believe that Helen and Irina are making huge impact for women in tech, and I know it's a not easy job to first get introduced and then continue to work on in this industry. So during my preparation, I joined the Women Who Code, and now I'm a software engineer at Google, which means that I can share my recently experience in actually in the interviewing process. Yeah, that's about me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a good point to mention that we meet each other at the basically mock interview, and today our discussion about interviews. Yeah, well, it's also a good point as it's basically the interview for software engineer, the interview where you need to prepare. It's not like you worked as software engineer and then you can came to the interview and just share your experience. No, you have to spend more time, a part of your job, to prepare. And my first question for panelists, how do you feel about the state of the interviewing process in the tech industry? Any upsides or downsides that you can name? I want to start with Jamica.
Yeah, so I do think that the current, I mean, the most common interviewing processes in tech companies certainly isn't perfect. There's a lot of downsides to it. Obviously, it it forces people to talk through as they're thinking. So we just actually, if you think about it, as a software engineer, you spend quite a lot of your time writing code and thinking to yourself about how you want to go about solving a problem. But in an algos interview, this is this is not certainly not the case. It's like you talking through as you're thinking, which is very difficult. At least I personally find it difficult to do that. So it feels very unnatural to me to have to do the interview in that way. But the upside of it is that it certainly helps me get a feel for what it's like to collaborate on a problem with an interviewer, which is most likely to be a software engineer in that company. It's also going to be likely to be my peer. So oftentimes you find yourself having to do that actually in some cases of your day-to-day work. So there's both pros and cons of it, but yeah, I wouldn't say it's perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's very good that you can ask person to solve the problem, and even if person don't know how to solve this problem, you can just try to cut the idea of how they collaborate, the ideas that they can generate. Arai, what do you think about it? I think you spend a lot of time to prepare to Google interview because they have strong algorithm and data structure section. As I know, they have like about 4 interviews where you need to solve these tasks on algorithm and data structure. So what do you think about it?
Overall, during my preparation and close to my on-site interviews, I realized that every candidate, if you want to actually get an offer, there's a way that you have to be in the good shape of solving the problem and giving their structured answer. So for me, it's like sport competition where you have to make everything like perfectly and in time. So it's the same as an interview process. Also, there's several type of the interviews, but let's say that about their maybe for example, solving technical questions and the problems, you have to just follow fewer steps, which is structured, and you have to try to make that things as structured as possible. So that's my idea, what I got from the preparation time after the actual on-site interviews. there's a point what you can get by asking some questions, or maybe by listening, or maybe fixing your some idea about the solution. So that's my opinion about it.
Yes, thank you. I think it's important to create some structure that you can follow on the interview. Aviksha, what do you think about it?
Yes, I mean, honestly speaking, whenever I used to interview, like be an interviewee, for example, and when I'm thinking through, like when the interviewer shoots a question, I have it in my mind that, okay, this is the question, this is what is expected, that, okay, you get it, the final answer. So probably you kind of start developing that structure in mind that, as Jamica mentioned previously, you are expected to, although it's a downside, you are expected to talk through what you are thinking. So as soon as you start thinking about the logic or the pseudocode or anything, I guess you have to like build that thing in your mind that now I have to proceed. Okay, this is how I proceed. Step A, I go through the solution. I just code it out in a simple way, and then I kind of optimize through it as I go, depending on what stage of the interview are in, obviously. But I think, yes, I mean, that kind of mental structure is also an important that time. Obviously something will come into your mind, be it a simple question or an medium level question or a tough question. Like there is something in your mind, and I think it's very important to also kind of keep on communicating what you are thinking, and then probably that also helps you in jotting down what you are thinking through, like just coding out the bits. So I think, yes, I mean, a structure certainly helps you eliminate all the other stuff. So yeah.
Thank you. That sounds like a lot of preparation. So how do you think, how can I understand that I'm ready for the interview? So probably Arai can start with it.
Yeah, as I told before, if you are feeling that you're in the good shape, that's that exact time which means that you're ready. So all the time after each mock interviews, I thought and I saw that I get some reviews and feedbacks that I had to fix or work on the some aspects of my solving problem. Even it can be communication, because I was over communicative. I tried to not to give any pause, and I just shared all my opinions about the problem, about the situation, and it was be confused for the interviewer. And yeah, it was also other side, other over trying to do something like for the best version of you. But overall, yeah. So I was working on each aspect of their interview, and I don't know, maybe there's a good way if you have a deadline and you know at what time you have to be prepared, and based on that time you are just spending, let's say, for a couple of weeks for the mock interviews, maybe some interviews with real company employees from Google or Amazon or Facebook, any other companies. You are just want to schedule this, and just by following the steps, you can be sure that close to that date you are almost prepared, and you can feel it.
Yes, thank you so much. It's good that you can feel it. I have never been in this condition, like I feel that I'm ready, but I had the interview and I passed some interviews even that I hadn't feel that I hadn't felt that I'm ready. So, well, I have done follow-up question. Should you cancel the interview if you feel that you are not ready? Jamica, what do you think?
Yeah, so I've certainly had experiences of both me as a candidate asking the recruiter if I can reschedule for various reasons. Obviously, sometimes you might find yourself not feeling great, or for whether you're ill or you're not mentally prepared. You may be very well prepared, like academically, like you know how to solve the problems, but then your mind condition isn't great. So I had in some instances asked the recruiter to reschedule, and they've been very accommodating with that, because it's in their best interest for you to be in your best condition before you go into the interview. So it should be fine to do that. And equally, as an interviewer, we've had requests from candidates to reschedule for whatever reason, and we are very supportive of that as a company, because you want to give people the best chance for them to pass. So if that means another week or maybe another couple of weeks to reschedule, then that's fine. And in some cases, some candidates would even just say, I want to stop the loop right now and I'll come back when I'm ready. Right? That's also a valid way to approach it. So it all has to be when you feel you're ready. It's perfectly fine to reschedule or cancel.
Thank you. That's a good point. But I also would say that, okay, I already feel that I'm okay. I'm good in good condition physically. I'm good mental health condition. It seems like I prepared academically, and even on mock interviews, my friends had me, okay, you're ready. But I still think, okay, I'm going to fail it. I need to go, but it definitely will be the fail. What do you think about this case, Adiksha?
Sorry, Irina, could you just repeat that? The last bit.
Yeah, I mean that it seems like I physically healthy and mentally also how I just scared. It seems like I already on mock interviews, my friend gave me feedback that it's going to be okay, you're ready, but I'm still scared.
Yeah.
What do you suggest?
Yes, okay. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think no one, like possibly no one can be ever like 100% like ready before any interview. There's no measure to to actually know that okay, you are like perfectly ready now or not perfectly ready now. I think it's just that level of confidence that you have before the interview. Like, let's say my interview is scheduled for a week after, and just before the day, I feel like I have done enough questions, but I just feel like, okay, maybe I should take some time just to, just to relax before the interview, not do anything, not to practice anything, but just relax before the interview and then give the interview. So I think it is okay to actually reschedule your interview, because when you can perform your best. You might be completely ready, but even if you have like a teeny tiny bit of tinge of scare or nervousness or anything before the interview, that might actually affect your interview, like the process of interview when you are actually talking to the person. So I think you should be like mentally ready, or even like mentally, physically, like in the best of your health, and also kind of be confident that okay, I can go through this interview no matter what. So yes, I mean, I personally have actually rescheduled my interviews in the past. I have asked asked the recruiters for like, okay, I want to take like a month because I have my personal commitments on my job, and I'm preparing parallelly. So I think, yeah, it is like perfectly fine to take your own time for the interviews, because you need to perform do your best, give your 100% during those interviews. So yeah.
Thank you. That's interesting. honestly, I would just go, even if I'm scared, even if I feel like I'm not prepared. I would just go to the interview, and sometimes it turned out that I was ready. I just was scared, and some moments in my life, I thought that I wouldn't be able to get this job this time. For example, at Yandex, I was like 100% sure that not this time. I just don't have enough time to prepare, but I just have that line right now. And it's turned out that I passed all stages. So I realized that, okay, I need to try even if I don't feel that I'm ready. It's my personal story. And also I would ask how would you advise to practice interview questions, especially algorithm and data structure? Who wants to give some advice?
I can start, and probably Arai and Jamica can add in later. So, I mean, typically to start preparing for algorithms and data structures, I think it's very important to brush up on your basics, because that is not something that we are working on every day at your work. On your job, it could be very different, and you might just need to go back and read some basics about, or tutorials about, like arrays and strings and trees and all of that. The best source I have found so far, which is like always useful, is LeetCode. That has quite a variety of questions, that has quite organized its questions according to the kind of interviews, and they have like kept questions like at an easy level, at a medium level, at a tough level. So you could, for example, start with the easy level during the first 2 weeks and then gradually move on to medium and tough questions. That kind of gives you, like, helps you increase your skills and hone your skills, and probably also kind of makes you more confident as you go across, as you go through. So yeah, I mean, most importantly, just practicing a lot of questions and going through the basics, going through all kinds of tutorials is actually quite important during the beginning weeks of preparation. I mean, Arai, what do you think? I mean, because you must have had some strategy for Google as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I can say that it's not you shouldn't jump to the like medium or hard question if you're a beginner in the data structure and algorithms. It's easier to start with small steps, and let's say maybe just to get some context about what the data structure algorithm is, and try to solve one topic of the algorithms in a simple question. And it can take time. Even the simple question can take even days, and but you shouldn't be struggled it. It's just there. It's like unfamiliar things, which after a time, after some work, and as in the result, you can see. For me, it was 6 months at least when I could feel that, oh, I know this structure. Oh, I can solve this problem with some algorithms. And I, starting from that day, I could feel that I can handle the simple questions. I can even just say how I can choose, how I can solve their medium questions, but I couldn't solve it just so efficient, so optimized version. But even though it was just small results after a couple of months, and I could say that you shouldn't give up on your dream by saying that, oh, this problem is hard for me. It's just one problem what you can solve now, and your this data structure will be on your mind later, when during the work time, you can use and you can optimize some part of the code base on the actual real product code. And it's a lot like it's the information and knowledge that you won't regret, that you understand it, you can handle data structure and algorithms. It's like one of the, I think, best investments before joining any other company.
Yeah, I really like the analogy you used, Arai, earlier about it being like a sport. So like you really have to practice solving these problems on a regular basis before you get to that point where you can read a problem and recognize, oh, that looks like a graph, or that looks like a linked list, or something like this, right? So it takes a lot of repetition for at least me personally, and I've seen this with people I've mentored and helped out before preparing for interviews as well, where we solve the same kinds of problems over and over until we can recognize that this problem is a certain shape or is solvable by different types of data structure. And so it really comes down to practice in my mind. It's just doing this day in, day out, and then doing it in a way that lets you build up on what you previously learned. So I think that's why it's much more easier to start with the simple problems, and once you get confident with that, you'll find that even with the medium and advanced problems, there is a pattern to it. Most of these questions they follow some sort of pattern that allows you to recognize, oh, this is a graph or something like this. So it's you get to that point by practice, just repeatedly practice.
Yeah, that's great. I would also add one more advice from the book Cracking Coding Interview. They say, do not go deep in every chapter of this book just from beginning. Instead of it, go to every chapter of this book. It's like the theme that we passed on our track, like LinkedIn graphs, linked lists, graphs, and etc. So go to every chapter and try to solve simplest questions, and do not stuck there. Do not try to go deeper, but instead of it, go to every chapter, and then you finished, go again and go to medium problems, and then you finished, go again and go with hardest problems. And I think this technique is really useful because you learn some theme, you're now familiar with it, and then you go to next theme, and now you're familiar with it. And when you start to go deeper to every theme, you start to be more familiar with it, and also you're reminded, and it's good, like mind works, like memory works. It's repeat the same material again, and it goes deeper in your memory. I think so. Yeah, that's one tool that I personally can advise, Cracking Coding Interview book. And do you want to advise any other tool to prepare for algo and data structure interview? Who wants to prepare something?
Yeah, I think everyone's heard about their LeetCode.com, the site when you can sort their problems. You can find based on their companies, on the tags, on the structures. You can easily see how others are solving that problem. So yeah, must have the platform and services at LeetCode first.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I typically like whenever I want to start preparing for interviews, or I typically just go for like I have a LeetCode account, but I kind of try to take a premium subscription account during that time. So you get access to even more features. I think they also do have like mock interviews. So where those are essentially like timed interviews. So you can actually select any of the interviews and see how you can solve a question within what time. I think that also quite helps a lot. So yeah, I mean, LeetCode by far is probably one of the most trusted tool for interview preparations. Cracking the code book, as Irina mentioned earlier, is also really helpful for brushing up on basics as well, because they do have quite like short description of about all the data structures, and kind of like typically 5 or 6 questions at the end of every chapter, just to help you go through. And yeah, I mean, this is all for the algorithm and the like the data structures part of it. There is also a website called Algo Expert, which has like a combination of algorithm and system designing questions. But Algo Expert is more like if you have completed your practicing of all the questions, you can just time your questions and then just start selecting a question randomly from Algo Expert and just completing that. So that would be kind of a mock interview again. But they do have like a collection of few questions which are like a very common questions during interviews. So yeah.
Yeah, I would add that having a network that you can tap into for practicing. So I think it was mentioned in the chat that there was a Russian-speaking Telegram group where people got people to mock interview them. I think there are many such communities around the internet as well. I mean, we obviously have this community, so we you could ask someone to do a mock interview with you. I think this is very useful, especially when you get to the point where you need to actually practice speaking out loud. This is how I'm planning to approach it. Like, are you coming across as you're communicating your ideas clearly? So I found that doing mock interviews with friends and people who are in networks like Women Who Code to be really helpful. So that's one other important resource. The other one is because I'm a very visual learner, so I like to visualize the arrays, the graphs when I try and review these concepts. So I find lots of resources on YouTube and places like there is a website called Interview Cake, which is also a paid subscription, but I pay for it when I'm preparing. But they do have a newsletter where they send out a new algorithms problem to solve once a week. And the following week, they reveal the solution. So you actually have like a week to kind of think about and try and solve that problem. So that's free. So I tend to tap into resources like this so that I can prepare for these interviews.
Wow, thank you. I didn't know about this site. Cake interviews. Interview cake, yeah. Yeah, I also would add that mock interviews is very helpful. I saw in the chat that somebody mentioned prom.com. That's a good resource. They already have platform for scheduling mock interviews. So you can just register and you have like 5 free interviews as credit. And also, well, if you leave your feedback on this platform, they give you 1 more free credit. And if it goes for every interview, eventually you have free credits for all time. That's how I used it. And if people here start to in the future, if they will start to think in the algorithms channel for mock interviews, we probably can start to organize these activities. I don't know how many people right now want to have some mock interviews, but we can start something in our WWCode if we will see demand on it. Yeah. One more thing I would add for mock interviews that for me it's very helpful as I can learn something or practice my skill because I know that something is scheduled for my mock interview. So it's like one more mechanism to push me to practice with algorithms and data structure. I have one more very important question to me. So when we are going through the interview, it's first of all collaboration. And outside of obviously trying to solve the problem, you also need to focus on collaboration and listen to what the interviewer is suggesting. How do you navigate a situation when the interviewer stays silent and that's it? Yeah. And for example, does not participate. How to deal with this situation?
I would say that you can easily ask interviewer, am I on the right way? What do you think about this part of my solution? And they can respond it. They can say that, oh, you're on the right way, just keep going. Or you can say that, oh, there's some things that you can fix. So it's not that thing that interviewer are your friend. You are working on together on the same process. And maybe it's good to brainstorm together, maybe be on the same page by solving this problem. But the communications style is different. So they can just listen you and maybe thinking in their mind that, oh, it's right, it's correct. So you can easily ask a question, am I on the right way? Or what do you think about it?
Okay, I would continue that interviewers say you just, yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it is that you can go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, what I would say,
Uh-huh.
what I would say a good way to manage that situation is to, well, as Arai said, you can always ask questions about your progress or the direction you're heading with your solution. But I would say in the beginning of the interview, especially when you're a few minutes in and the interviewer has just described to you the problem and then they kind of sit back and not say anything else, what's useful to do is to clarify your understanding of the problem with the interviewer. So that would require you to actually ask a lot of questions without even going to the solution. So, asking about edge cases or does this, what certain things about the problem mean, like when they talk about, so there's a problem I always like to ask in interviews about graph coloring, and I always like to use certain words like, oh yeah, good and bad, and people would tend to fixate on what's the meaning of good and bad. And actually, if I ask questions about, oh, what does this mean? Is this just a label? Or is there like a qualifier for me to classify something as good and bad? So this kind of conversation pushes the interviewer to actually have a conversation with you about the problem. So just by clarifying your understanding, even if it's just repeating what the interviewer said about the problem back at them, is a good way to kind of start having a conversation with that interviewer, as opposed to you just asking a question and then them saying yes, no. Is actually asking for clarification and talking about the problem a little bit more before you start diving into a solution.
Yeah, thank you. And how to find in this case a balance between asking questions about a given task and generating solution? Aviksha, what do you think?
Well, I think, well, personally, like during an interview, if it could so happen that, as you mentioned, that interviewer could be silent and then you go about asking a question if I'm on the right way. But it also could be like different people, as we talked about, and different people observe you differently. I mean, for one interviewer, it might just be that they are observing what you are actually writing on the board then, or what how is your way of thinking through, or like when you're just talking. So I think the balance, and the balance could be probably defined by asking like the to the point questions. Like one could be like, yes, am I on the right way? And then if they tell you yes, or let's say no, do you think you can do it in a better way, or do you think we could approach it in some other method? I think the balance would be just by conversing about the question on hand, or by just like discussing about if you're already working on the optimal solution, there is nothing that you can actually probably ask the interviewer. He or she might just be observing you for to give you the feedback later. But if I would say, if you are feeling kind of nervous or something at that point, you could just strike a conversation, but not probably ask too much, maybe. I think that would probably create kind some sort of a balance.
Yes, thank you. Jamica, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I would say that I also tried in my own interviews in the past to just ask the interviewer to be explicit. Like I like to say, I explicitly say, tell the interviewer, by the way, if I'm a little bit quiet, it's just because I'm thinking for a couple of seconds. Or the interviewer themselves would actually be explicit and say, um, let me know at any point in time if I can interrupt you. And just establishing that common understanding of how, because there's so little time to get to know each other in an interview. So at some point you have to be explicit about, and I tend to do this as an interviewer. I would say, hey, so do you want to let me know when you're ready to talk about your next step? And this was especially important during remote interviews because there was no body language. Like it was very hard to see that. So we had to be explicit with each other about when it's okay to talk and when it's when I'm supposed to kind of just shut up and let them think through the problem. And so that also helps sometimes. Just being explicit, like, hey, when I raise my hand, I say I'm ready to talk again. So that always helps.
Thank you. That's very good points, especially for remote interviews. Yeah, it's very good to mention that you can explicitly say what do you feel, what are you thinking about. Yeah, and let's go with very important questions. Sometimes you panic or give up prematurely. So how do you stay calm and focused when you think that you already failed? How do not click with the interviewer? Let's start with Arai.
I would say it's so important to be with someone who can, I cannot say it in English, who can support you. So it was my husband who could always say that I could handle it. And it was long run. It is actually a long run. So if you know that it's not going to be in the next week or in the next Monday, but you have to prepare for a couple of months, even for a year or even more, you can say that, oh, it's just for now. So it's just one time fail. it's not the big trouble overall in your preparation. So I would say that it's always in the upsides and downsides of their preparation. The candidate always feels like after solving one or first problem, you could say that, oh, I could do it. I'm the best. I can pass every interview what I can pass. And after some failing one of the question or spending after a couple of hours, you could say that, oh, I couldn't do it. So it's always by waving away or just going down and up. And even the on-site also, and the on-site interviews, you're also feeling the same things. So I would say that it's not easy, but they could be so emotional, so uneasy process. But overall, maybe imagining the result and the goal of their preparation process would be motivated.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, I'm thinking about how it's helping to have more interviews, even with your family. I mean, it's very good point that you can ask your family member to help you with interview. You can ask a close friend to help you with interview. And this person can give you feedback like, oh, come on, you shouldn't give up. It's hard, like you gave up at some point, so you shouldn't. And yeah, Davisha, what do you think about it?
Yes, I mean, it's very important to have motivation and support during the process of your preparation for an interview. I think tech interviews, especially these days, as we can know, can be actually very overwhelming at times, because there is just such a load of things that one needs to prepare and study, and then questions, and it can consume a lot of your time. So yeah, I mean, it is important to have someone to talk to, a friend, a partner, or just your, even just calling up your parents and or talk to, like, just to, you know, calm your mind down, calm your head down. I would say there shouldn't, like, the preparation shouldn't be like the only thing you should be doing in those period of 6-7 months or years or whatever. There should be something else, like, let's say you have been studying for quite a while. I think can just go out, take a walk, de-stress, meet someone, talk to them. So yeah, I mean, it shouldn't essentially consume your mind or overwhelm you. I can say all that it is important to have constant motivation or support during that process, because without that, yeah, it can quite take a toll on your mind, because you are doing so much. So you shouldn't be adding more stress to yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for your answer. And Jamica?
Yeah, I'm just gonna share a funny story about something similar that happened to me. I was doing an interview as a candidate, and I obviously panicked. And what I ended up doing was, you know how interviewers offer you like, oh, hey, do you need some water or a drink? And I ended up basically drinking the whole bottle of water during the interview because my mind basically went blank. So I was just drinking the water and like panicking. And after drinking all that water, I had to go to the loo. And actually, I asked the interviewer, can I just pop out to the loo? And we paused for 5 minutes. And the interviewer was very gracious and let me go to the loo for 5 minutes. And what I did in the loo was I basically had a wee and then washed my face. And that just kind of reset myself. I don't know what is it about splashing your face with water like that. Just in any kind of situation when I have some sort of panic or that I couldn't think clearly, just splashing my face with water at that moment kind of just reset my mind, and I went back to the to that room and actually had a half working solution by then. I didn't get the job for that interview, but I just thought that it was a very, I would say it's a very vivid memory, because I was just so much panicked, and I was just drinking all the water. But yeah, going to the loo at that point in time kind of helped me reset and just be calm about it. So I don't know if that will work for you, but if you do find yourself in that situation, maybe you can try it.
I think in remotely it's even easier. You say that sorry, I have to go 1 minute. Just stay there, please. And you can even just go and reset yourself somehow. That is good advice. I haven't thinking about it in this way before. So yeah. Well, I would ask probably the last question for today for our panel. Yeah, so is there a thing you wish you knew before the start? You had knew before the start of the interview process. So, Aditya, what do you think?
Sorry,
So again, is there a thing you wish you knew you had knew before the start of your interview process?
Sorry, Irina, could you please repeat?
Do you have anything you wish you knew before your interview?
Okay, yeah. Okay, before my interview, so typically all the interviews, like as a candidate, which I have done in the recent times, I make sure, because I'm also working and then doing the interviews, so I make sure that I take that entire day off, because I do not know how my interview is going to go, although I'm already prepared for it, but it could go good, it could go bad, but it could also be overwhelming after that, because you are actually going through 2 or 3 questions during that interview time, and it quite puts a lot of like burden on your mind at that time, that you are doing the question and you are talking through it and you are discussing a lot of stuff. So I just want that entire other half of the day for myself, just to reflect on what I have done, or let's say if I have the interview scheduled in the second half, I just take the first half to not do anything, but to just eat a good meal, or drink a good coffee, and then just prepare to sit for the interview. I think that is very important. When you have, also another thing to add here is like the on-site interviews, those were like all remote during this period. I think they are going to be remote also for maybe for the next year as well. So those are like a sequence of interviews, one after the other, and those actually could be very overwhelming, like very burdening. So I think it's very important before the interviews, before the start of the interviews, just a day before the interview, I think I didn't practice anything. I was just taking that day off just to calm my mind, so that the next day I am all awake and freshened up for the interviews. So yeah, I think that is like my strategy for the interviews, like just before a day or just before the start of the interviews, I just don't think about anything else, and just take some time off.
Yeah, that's good. Well, personally, I wish I knew about this site that had some tips on how interview process is going on at some company. Well, I need to remember. Well, maybe Arai can continue.
Overall, I would say about the preparation, starting from the beginning, it's a new, it can be so new for you. And I'm feeling after starting work at Google the same way as I'm starting to learn how to solve a problems as a new data structured algorithm for me. And I would say that everyone's is unique, and the main important part is everyone has to build or make own methods of learning new things. It's not about the data structured algorithms. I would say why the top tech companies are asking their general data structures and algorithm question, because they cannot ask some service or tools because they're using and building own service and tools. And it took, for me also, it's just taking a lot of time to be able to use them and to work based on that services. So it's for me, I can imagine that it's the same way how I'm learning the data structures and algorithms. And I would say that it will take time. Don't panic at it, and just make on your own way to learning new things. It would be a lot helpful to after the interviews, after successful interviews, I believe, to start to work on the new company.
That's great. Well, now I remember this site. So sometimes I say I wish I knew I wish I had checked before the interview what they asked on Glassdoor. It's a site that I have reviews on companies, and they sometimes have a lot of tips on the interview process, how it went, what they asked, or sometimes I think I wish I had asked the interview, no, not interview, but HR, more about how it should went, how it should go. Well, anything, did you have anything the same, Jamica?
Yeah, I think when I first started doing interviews as a new grad, I didn't know that people spent a lot of time preparing for the interviews, because there were people who looked like they just got it immediately off the bat. Like there's always that impression that some people are naturally they naturally respond to those interviews, like they just know, but that's not the case. Like lots of people actually practice lots of times before they get to that point, and that wasn't obvious to me when I started. So yeah, now I'm glad I know that a lot of people actually spend a lot of time preparing for interviews.
Yes, thank you. One thing for me was also I wished I knew more about mock interviews before. I mean, I didn't know that it's normal to have mock interview before the interview. And I didn't know that it's so helpful. Well, that's what my personal story. Personally. And yeah, do we have any question from our audience today? So if anyone wants to raise the question, so feel free to ask. Right now you have this time. Actually, I saw one question in the chat that I believe it was answered as well. Is it possible for non-programmers to help give mock interviews? And I would agree with the answer that yes, they can help you on only behavioral questions like what have you done on your previous job? What did you like most on your previous job? What do you like to work in which way? What do you prefer in your communication, and etc. And still, you can practice your how you deal with panic. Yeah, you can practice what what should you do if you're excited, if you can't breathe because you are too excited about your answers. And that's also good practice.
Hi.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, ladies who shared on the panel. You are all extraordinary, and thank you so much for sharing your experience, and thank you for your time. I have a question regarding the difference between interviewing for a so-called front-end position versus back-end position. And I would imagine that for back-end position, probably the algorithm requirement is a little bit more strict or harder. And for front end, maybe, I just want to know the difference. Thank you very much. Is my question clear? Sorry, I cannot see.
Yes.
Yes. I think your question is very clear. So I would speak from my experience. So most of the companies I worked with doesn't normally differentiate between front end and back end. So engineer is engineer. There might be a distinction between engineer and SRE, for example, but not between front end and back end. And the reason being that they interview for just the ability to translate ideas into code, or for you to recognize a certain data structure based on how a problem was framed. So there's less about, it isn't really about whether you know JavaScript or how to use React components versus data structures and algorithms. So I think most tech companies do it that way, but of course some companies differentiate between the two. And I think I personally don't have experience with those companies, but yeah, in the traditional sense of the tech companies like the FANGs, they wouldn't differentiate between front end and back end. Is software engineer. You could end up in either.
Yes, I agree with it.
Just to sorry, Irina, just to add to what Jamica mentioned, that of course, I mean, everyone is an engineer, and then it really depends on how well you understand the data structures and everything. But yeah, I mean, from my personal experience, well, I am a backend engineer. Primarily, I work on like Java and Groovy and all of that stuff. But I have worked with like engineers who are like typically only front-end engineers in the past, and also I work with them now. And to be honest, I think there is like there was no such distinction as in who works like as he wanted to know that the level of coding is harder in one than the other. I don't think there is anything like that, because we all work on like similar projects. We all contribute like quite a lot equally to the project that we are working on. And yes, I mean, with some companies who typically would want kind of a prior experience with engineers who have done who are front-end engineers in the past, or who just want to transition into front-end engineering, they might look for skills like, okay, how much of JavaScript do you know, or like, have you worked with React, or like just the basics of front-end engineering. They might have one or two extra interview rounds with them for front-end engineering. That is what I can tell you from my experience in the past. And I recently interviewed someone for a front-end engineer position in my organization, but that was typically just an algorithm round where we just went through asking them questions about a question was given, and they had to solve it, and then they had to look at the complexity of that and talk through that with us. So I think that is also what happens when you apply for a backend engineering position. So I think majority of the basics still remain the same in that case, in both the interviews.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So if you already passed interview for front-end, back-end, or front-end engineer, I think you can go to back-end as well. Question one more. Are interviews as difficult for smaller companies as well? It's a good question. Yeah, for example, Arai, she passed the interview to Google, who has all these rounds for algorithm data structure. But it's true that a smaller company do not have this stage of the interview sometimes at all. What do you think about it?
I would say that the interview process in the fund companies, they're structured because of their products and the teams are different and they cannot ask one thing. That's why it's like technical problems and algorithms, data structures. In the startup companies, it varies, and sometimes they wanted to find a person who knows or who experienced in one tool, and as a company, they want to solve their problem as quick as possible. They don't have time to teach the person to their own tools. So that's why their question and the interview process can be different rather than asking their just like technical data structures problem questions. So it depends on their purpose. So what the candidate they are looking for. That's based on that they will ask different questions. Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting. I'd echo what Helen was saying in the chat, because when I joined Thought Machine, we were a very small company. It was like 40 people. And now we are about 300. So it's grown significantly over the last few years. But we interview in the same way that tech companies do, even when we were small. And the reason is that we were looking for the best talent. As Helen said, it's a very competitive market in London. There's a lot of companies who want to get the best engineers, and so we have to set the bar quite high in that sense. So, but on the other hand, there are some startups that I've worked with in the past where the primary purpose was to just get a prototype off the ground. So anyone who could just build something really, really quickly was the most important thing, rather than someone who could build software that could last in production for a few years. So some companies would decide to not even have that algorithms exercise in their interview process because it's just not something that they're looking for. So yeah, it depends on what the smaller companies need programmers for.
I think I can add for companies that are not startup, they already settled. It's on the market, but they are not very big companies. And they also don't have this algorithm data structure stage. They can ask about the language that you work on, because that's basically that you will work in this company. So you basically will work with the same languages that they use, and the same framework. And first of all, you need to support that they already have, and add new features, but not at a high rate speed, because they already settled, and that's good for them. So yeah, and you can, if you don't have experience with algorithm data structure right now, but you need job right now, I think it's also a good point to start to work for smaller companies that do not ask you to know all these things.
if I may add a small note here, do not think of smaller companies of like something less. They are different, and like it depends on you personally what would work best for you, because big organization is very challenging. It has its own challenges, and a smaller company might work better for you. And even like the fact that they don't ask algorithmic questions doesn't mean anything at all.
Yeah, I agree. Some startups can also do not ask about algorithm data structure, but ask very tricky problems. That depends. Yeah, so I don't see any more questions. So I think we can wrap up right now our event. And yeah, thank you.
Did we just lose Irina?
I'm afraid
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
I think so, yes.
I thought my
And
internet was gone.
This virtual calls are so weird. You're like you're calling a spirit. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm gonna take the lead. I don't see any more questions. I do see a note from Christina in the chat for trying to find mock interviews. Maybe if it's something that our community is interested in, we can provide with a platform to do it. I would most certainly recommend joining our Slack workspace and just asking like, hey, like, does anyone want to prepare together for an interview? Because to be honest, having a community to prepare for an interview is priceless.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. Problems today with my connection. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So no more questions. I think that's a wrap up. So thank you all very much for joining. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please join our Slack. Please follow our social media. I'm going to follow up with an email once I have this recording ready. And stay tuned for our future events. We have an event next week and the week after, and a book club in the end of the month. So yeah, stay tuned. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
Lynn.
Bye.